What is good, everybody, man? Let me know if y'all can hear me in the chat. It's been a minute. I'll be honest, man. It's been a minute for the live streams. I've been busy traveling. I've been busy, getting highlights together, covering a little bit of the NFL draft and things like that. So, it yesterday. I'll be honest, man. It kind of took the air out of me. I'll be. I think everyone knows what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about the 11 FCS prospects that were selected in the NFL draft. The one HBCU guy drafted in Isaiah Bolden out of Jackson State. And then we're going to get into a few topics that um, I think a lot of people are talking about today in terms of the transfer portal hurting FCS football, HBCU football in general. And then also there's this weird conversation about what is the best path to take from FCS to the NFL. And well, we're going to talk about all these different aspects, and I'll open up the call lines a little bit later in the show. It'll be 701-779-9585. But man, hit the like button, go ahead and subscribe. We're going to try to make a push to 7K here, hopefully get to 10K before the season. I appreciate y'all tuning in. We're just going to address the elephant in the room. This was not going to be a topic tonight. Um, and it kind of, I think it shocked a lot of people, man. I heard about it earlier today. I was hoping it necessarily wouldn't happen, but man, this will kind of tie into some topics we're going to talk about later in the show. But I think yesterday was it was a massive eye opener for a lot of guys, not just in HBCU football, but in FCS football. I was told by a coach after the draft that due to the lack of just total FCS talent that was drafted, regardless of the reason that that this happened, because you've heard a lot of speculation. Was it the COVID pushing a lot of these quote unquote super seniors back a year so the draft class was too loaded? Is it the exposure? Is it should we play this? Should we play FBS teams? Should we not play FBS teams? Should we play in the playoffs? Should we play in the Celebration Bowl? It's always the same regurgitated debates time and time again. Regardless of whatever reason you want to go with, the fact remains that last year there were 24 FCS players drafted. The draft class was arguably deeper and more talented at the top in terms of FCS talent. And we still only saw 11 FCS guys and really 10 true FCS guys get drafted. And this has become a widespread problem. And I want to kind of get into it just a little bit, is that you would think the more successful you are at whatever level you play, the better chance you have of getting drafted. But I was doing some research. None of the Walter Payton Award winners, which is the quote unquote FCS Heisman, have been drafted since Trey Lance. I want to put that in perspective. Trey Lance was the last Walter Payton Award winner to hear his name called in the NFL draft. There hasn't been a Buck Buchanan Award winner, for the best defensive player in FCS football. None of those guys have been drafted since, I believe, 2015. So what the NFL is pretty much putting out there is, no matter how great of a season you may think you're having, it's still technically not enough unless you have some sort of external factors elsewhere to get drafted. And so I know the chat's like 50-50. I got some FCS people, I got some HBCU people, I got some people who like both. But I think too many people are pinpointing it as an HBCU issue or an FCS issue when it's really both. It's regardless of HBCU versus FCS, these HBCU programs are a part of the FCS, so therefore it's affecting every program in the country. The only program that may not have an argument to this draft speculation is North Dakota State. They've had 5 consecutive years of someone drafted. So the guys in Fargo are probably not concerned about this. But unless you're in the MVFC, there's an issue. There's a real issue. Let me pull up a tweet. I meant to put it on the slide real quick, but I sent this I tweeted this out and I sent this to some people. There have been 47 FCS players drafted since 2020. So you got 47 players since 2020 to be drafted from the FCS. 18 of those are from just the Missouri Valley Conference, which is North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Northern Iowa, those teams. So those are accounting for a majority. And then when you add the 6 Big Sky players, you're looking at over half of the FCS prospects that have been drafted are from the Missouri Valley and Big Sky. The Missouri Valley, Big Sky, and CAA are the only 3 conferences that over these 3 or 4 years have had more than 5 players drafted. So unless you are in the CAA, Big Sky, and really just the MVFC, there is a major issue about your talent not being seen on a national stage in terms of NFL scouts and franchises putting any respect or value into what you're doing on the field. The SWAC, only 3 draft picks since 2020. The MEAC, only 1 draft pick since 2020. The Ivy League, 2. OVC, 2. SoCon, 2. Southland, 2. WAC, 2. Nobody other than the CAA, Big Sky, and MVFC has more than 5 in the past 4 drafts. That's an issue. In 2020, 2021, only 6 players were drafted from the FCS. So this past draft was the second fewest behind those 2 since 1994. That is ridiculous. And the way it was put to me by a scout was, you look at, let's say you sign an undrafted free agent 3 or 4 years down the line, he's going to want a new contract. Why would I draft a guy like an Aubrey Miller and have to pay him more when I can sign him for an undrafted free agent contract for, a few $100,000, and I save myself some money, and Aubrey Miller replaces the guy who's a 4-year vet asking for money because he's going to do the exact same thing that guy was possibly doing. They're looking for a discount on players, and the players that are going to be looking at, in terms of discounts, are FCS guys. This transfer with Niles Gaddy is a direct correlation, because there are a lot of players who are now looking around saying, what do I have to do to get drafted? And I understand people are going to throw out, there's Power 5 FBS programs that don't have players drafted, but still the percentage is higher. If you're going to the casino, you're going to place a bet on the winning odds that are the highest for you. You're not going to take a chance and bet on the lowest odds. That doesn't make any sense. So that's why this is happening. I get it. And there are Power 5 programs, Colorado, Texas, some of these programs that aren't producing a ton of talent. But the percentage, if you play in one of these P5 conferences, is much higher. You get selected much higher. Go look at the stats of some of these 5th, 6th round picks. They got picked from some of these places. Old Dominion had players being picked with like 3.5 career sacks. I want to put it in perspective. James Houston had one of the greatest FCS years of all time. He had over 20 tackles for loss, almost 20 sacks. That dude went 6th round. Almost 7th round when you look at just the number of picks. Had all the accolades, had the P5 starting experience, was a finalist for the Buck Buchanan, first team all SWAC Defensive Player of the Year. He had to do all that, check out all these boxes, go to the All-Star game in the East-West Shrine Bowl and ball out. He had to check all those boxes to get to the same place somebody who put up 3.5 sacks playing in the CUSA did yesterday. I feel like that's the perspective missing. And so I don't blame anybody. And this is the scary part of it as well. I had a coach tell me, as soon as the draft was over, they called all the graduate transfers and guys that they thought would be shook up by the draft, called them to start recruiting them to stay on the roster, because there were guys who were getting the thought to leave their program and try to find an FBS home. There was that much panic, not just in HBCU football, which I was talking to She Loves Z before the show. There's like the HBCU Twitter space is so loud and everything's so publicized. The panic is not just in the HBCU circle. It's across the FCS in terms of, what are we going to do to get these players on more draft boards, in the spotlight, and everything like that. Like, there has to be somewhere to go from here. And, we'll get back to the players who are drafted, man, because I do want to give them a shout out. But I'll skip forward to this, because this debate, I think HBCU Nightly went on until about 2 a.m. yesterday, talking just about this topic. and it was, what is the path for FCS HBCU players to the NFL? And I put this together to get to a final point that I really want to make that's not even on the screen, is you see the guys who get drafted if with four impressive performances against P5 competition. The Jacoby Durants with the 2 picks against Clemson, a top 10 Clemson team in Death Valley. And the Rams said that put Jacoby Durant on their radar. You have the Titus Howards from Alabama State, who was dominant against Auburn, who also had draft picks at defensive end. That's what put Titus Howard on the map. That helped him become a first round pick. Then you got the guys from the FCS who have elite special teams ability. You have the Isaiah Boldens and the Montreal Washingtons. Both of those guys were elite return men in terms of kick and punt returns, and that brought them some value, and that eventually got them drafted. You have the accolades and on-field performance, which everyone feels like this should account for the most. Cody Mock and Trevor Penning are 2 guys. Cody Mock goes in the 2nd round this year. Trevor Penning was a top 20 pick last year out of Northern Iowa. Then you got the guys who get drafted based on measurables and elite athleticism. You look at the Marte Mapus, a pick this year out of Sacramento State, who was an elite linebacker. And then you got elite athleticism with Andreas Sovas, who's 6'3", 205 pounds, and broke the 60-meter record in the track and field in the NCAA. Then you got the guys who showed out at all-star games, the Christian Watsons and the Cole Stranges. Christian Watson and Cole Strange, 1st and 2nd round picks last year. What I wanted to show here is that there isn't this one size fits all for what gets players drafted. There's too much. I feel like people are wasting too much time trying to come up with like this special formula where if you sprinkle a little bit of this over here, sprinkle a little bit of that over there, that we can check off these boxes and have more players go to the NFL draft. When you look at the data, look at the trends, there's not a one size fits all. Like Jacoby Durant doesn't fit every one of these categories, but he got drafted. Cody Mock doesn't fit every one of these categories, but he got drafted. Like, there isn't a one size fit all. You're not going to be able to compile a list of things that FCS HBCU prospects have to check off to get drafted. You're wasting your time. It doesn't exist. It's not going to happen. Unless you are the person in the room making the pick, nobody can come up with the rationalization, the theory, the steps to get drafted. There is so many things that have to happen along the way. You have to check off a few of these categories. You have to have the connections. You have to be on the board probably before your senior year. There's so many things that have to go right. The draft class has to fall just right. Are you entering the draft with a loaded corner class? Are you entering the draft with a bad wide receiver class? So therefore it helps you move up on the draft board. Year by year, it's so different. Like, I feel like people are getting too caught up and too shook up about what happened this weekend and not taking it just a step back and looking at the totality, the overall aspect of everything that happened this weekend in the draft. There is not a one size fits all, man. That's what I really wanted to come on here and say, is that I feel like people are being they're not thinking about this as far as they should. I mean, listen, there's some things that help you. Like when you look at all these players who are drafted, everyone in the chat who knows these players can probably say all these players probably hit 3 or more of these categories. That definitely helps. It definitely helps, but it's not a guarantee, because I can name a few guys that didn't get drafted over the past 2 or 3 years that fit a lot of these categories. So I think something was really telling. If you haven't had a chance, go to Twitter after the show, and I believe it's on HBCU Nightly's Twitter account. They had KJ Black, coach at the Rams, used to be FAMU's QB coach. He came on the show and said that when Isaiah Bolden was drafted, there were people in the war room who didn't know who he was. I'm gonna repeat that. When Isaiah Bolden was drafted, there were people in the building that did not know who he was. When I hear that, it doesn't matter what Isaiah Bolden did throughout his career, where he went to school, how he performed, what role, what scheme he fits best in, how he performed at a combine, if he got invited, a postseason all-star game. Nothing mattered if he's not even on the scouts board. If a scout doesn't even know a kid's name, how do you expect him to get drafted? And I get it. Listen, the scouts have a lot of responsibility, all that, but you can't tell me that Isaiah Bolden shouldn't have been known by every single scout in the NFL. You're talking about a guy who was a top 15 FCS prospect. And then on top of that, too, Isaiah Bolden's all-star game he participated in was in California. It was in the exact same state, not far from where the Rams organization is. But there was a scout in that organization that did not know who Isaiah Bolden was, who participated in an all-star game in the state that they are located in. Like, put that into perspective. If a high school player in the state of Alabama went to a camp in Alabama, was a 5-star, does anyone think the Alabama recruiters would not know who that kid was? It that makes no sense to me. That's problem number one, is that the scouts aren't doing their due diligence on this whole thing. And I understand that we have the HBCU Legacy Bowl, the HBCU Combine. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. It doesn't help. And I know that might be tough to hear, but I'm gonna put in perspective of why I don't think it's impactful as everyone has promoted it to be. What good is a bowl game where talent and conferences that nobody respects their level of competition all play each other? If the scouts and everyone don't respect the MEAC, don't respect the SWAC, we all know they don't respect D2 football, then why in the world would they respect a game where all that talent they already don't think is good enough play each other? It logically would make no sense that the scouts put any I would say stock into what's going on in New Orleans throughout the week. What happened in New Orleans? Like, look at the players who shine: Cam Peterson, Jason Dumas, Xavier Smith, Nelson Jordan, Nugget. I mean, only a handful of those even signed undrafted free agent deals. Nelson Jordan is still unsigned. Jason Dumas is still unsigned. I mean, at, at the end of the day, what is the point? And then on top of that, with the Senior Bowl, I got to go through and count how many guys from the Senior Bowl got drafted, but I know their hit rate is somewhere in like the 80-90 percentile. If you go to the Senior Bowl, you're supposed to hear your name called in the draft. Is it a coincidence that 3 of the players at the Senior Bowl didn't get drafted are from the FCS? Isaiah Land, Aubrey Miller, and McClendon Curtis from Chattanooga, for people who might not know. Is it shocking to anyone that those are 3 of the guys who didn't get drafted from the Senior Bowl? All 3 from the 3 guys from the FCS? At the end of the day, man, there's got to be something done. And I talked to some people. Here's what I'll give you guys the feedback. I'm not saying this excuses anything or whatever. I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. I get it, but from what I heard, Aubrey got knocked for his 40 time. Is what I heard at the pro day. And then Isaiah Land, KJ Black said it in the space last night. Isaiah Land was playing at times last year at 205 to 215 at edge rusher, guys. 205 to 215. And every time an NFL scout comes to campus to visit during the season, they get updated weights and heights and everything from all the players. Man, there is no way you could play edge rusher at the next level at 205 to 215. And then you look at Mark Evans, man. I would be honest, man. I really was hoping that NFL Combine did not hurt Mark. But we got to look back, because everyone in the chat can tell you Mark Evans was appearing in 4th and 5th rounds of every mock draft out before the Combine. Every single mock draft you looked at, Mark Evans was one of the first HBCU guys to be taken. He goes to the Combine and absolutely has one of the worst performances in his positional group, and now he doesn't even get looked at in the NFL draft. So at the and then with some of the FCS guys that I've heard as well in terms of size and other things like that, it's just there's always an excuse, and it's just at the end of the day, and like Coach Black said, some of the FCS programs and especially the HBCU programs, the nutrition and the extracurricular stuff that they don't have funds for is one of the biggest things that really does separate the subdivisions. At the FCS, you don't have there is not money for all the nutritionists, all the weight management, organizing what you have to eat, how you have to work out. All this stuff has to connect, and at the FCS there's a big disconnect in that one spot. So when you have undersized guys that are playing at the P5 level with millions of dollars of funding, you can come in and they get you on a nutrition plan and you can put on 30 pounds of muscle like just with a snap. But then on top of that, at the FCS level, how many programs do you guys know have true funding to set up the whole team on a nutrition plan and individualize that to each and every player? I would say the list is less than like 10 or 15. Easily less than 20, in my opinion. There's no way some of these schools have the ability to do that. And that goes back to something that's really out of the control of some of these universities to handle, because that's not in the budget, that's not in the funding, and that's just another reason why some of these programs have been underfunded for years, and that's a whole nother conversation. um it was so disappointing yesterday, man, just because I feel like a lot of people were really taken aback. You know, I told you guys my range the whole time was 3 to 6. um I thought 3 HBCU guys to 6 was my goal. I'm not surprised about Isaiah. I called it on Ken's stream. I thought the Patriots were going to be his landing spot for sure. But I thought I really did think that Aubrey, Isaiah, and Mark were someone was going to grab them. But it looks like that it really it I don't even know where to take it. And She Loves D. I'll be honest. Some of them aren't the fault of scouts, but you can't tell me that these guys couldn't be on your radar. For a scout not to know a player's name who was actually drafted by another franchise, of a franchise I'll add, that has won the most Super Bowls, if I'm not mistaken, in NFL history. So that's the scout's fault. Now, if a player did something otherwise to cause himself not getting drafted, I get it. I'm not upset about that. But I think there's a lot of things that work. The whole point of this stream really and truly was everyone's got to stop making it so binary. Like they can't be thinking in like it's this one thing or this one thing or these two things. Like there are so many factors at play. You got to take into account so many different aspects, and there's not you can't put blame on one person or one thing or anything like that. There's so many different factors you got to realistically look at. And then I also want to throw this out to you guys too. I'll throw this out here. Is the transfer portal part of the reason that this could be happening too? And is it overall hurting FCS football? I want to throw this out here. Two of the last three Jerry Rice Award winners, which is given to the freshman of the year at the FCS level, have now transferred to FBS programs. Cameron Ward and Shador Sanders. Giovanni McCoy at Idaho has stayed put from this point so far. 2022, 190 FCS players transferred to FBS programs. And I want those out here. In 2022, 68 of those FCS players that transferred to FBS programs had on-field honors. And what I define as on-field honors, they were all conference, they were all FCS freshman All-Americans, or they were FCS All-Americans. 68 All-American / all-conference players have left the FCS for the FBS, and 10 or more freshmen on the Bluebloods FCS All-American list have entered the portal going into next season. My question to you guys is it going to be sustainable? And this is no shot to any individual player who may have bounced back to the FCS or anything like that, because there are success stories, the Cole Kellys, the Aubrey Millers, the Zay Boldens. But is it Is it feasible for the FCS to survive with their best players from the FCS going FBS and the FBS sending their worst players back to the FCS? There is no to me, that does not seem like a sustainable model. We're going to develop and send this other league our best players, our brightest and most our best players on the field, and you're gonna send us all your players who could not see the field at your university, or had something happen off the field where they had to find another option. Is that a sustainable model for FCS football overall? And I would argue that it's probably not at the end of the day. When Jerry Rice Award winners, when double digit FCS freshman All American are headed to FBS, and then you're getting FBS guys who, yeah, they may be former 5, 4, 3 stars, but they haven't played in 3 years. Is that really a major pickup? Because I would argue that FCS transfer portal pickups are not all created the same. Getting a guy like a James Houston has that had experience. I mean, James Houston might have been playing a different position. James Houston he started multiple games at Florida. Getting a guy who's proven like that is completely different than landing the 4-string defensive tackle from Missouri who hasn't played in 3.5 years. So yeah, you're gonna have the success stories, but at the end of the day, man, that can't be good. When you're sending guys like Robert Mitchell, you're sending guys, or not Robert Mitchell, Corey Bullock. You're sending guys like Bashil Tootin. You're sending guys like let's just be like Shador is a weird example. Like we'll say Shador, we'll say Cameron Ward, we'll say all these guys who have done amazing things at the FCS level, but now they're all headed FBS. So like this is the example I use. I was talking to an Alcorn alum about this after the draft. How many people in the chat think Steve McNair would have finished his career at Alcorn State if he played in today's age of college football? You're talking about one of the greatest players of all time at the collegiate level. He still holds all the records in FCS still for quarterbacks pretty much. I don't think people can feasibly come up with the amount of money that Steve McNair would have had thrown his way after his sophomore and junior years. They would have offered him he would have probably set the record for NIL offered, and the tampering would have been insane, and that would have been worth it. Another example, we'll take it out of the HBCU sphere. Is there any chance another Cooper Kupp comes along at Eastern Washington? Cooper Kupp broke almost every record Jerry Rice held from Valley. Put that in, Cooper Kupp holds almost every single FCS record for a wide receiver and had one of the greatest careers of all time as an FCS wide receiver. There is no chance you could tell me Cooper Kupp would have stayed with all this, with all the stuff. You see, I agree. Listen, D, I agree. He had offers, but things are so different now in terms of legal NIL and benefits and stuff like that. I'm just saying it's a lot harder to stay at times. And I'm not saying McNair would have left or not. I'm just giving an example of players who from the FCS developed over 4 years. Are those players, do they still exist? I'll be honest, do they still exist at the FCS level? Because for what I'm seeing, man, I don't I want to put this out too. I don't blame any kids. I don't blame any kids for transferring or anything like that. Listen, I love player movement. I love player freedom to do what you need to do, man. It's your career. Do whatever you please. But at the end of the day, I'm just looking at it from a global perspective of the health of the FCS in general, which is a completely different conversation rather than beating up the kids who decide to transfer. And I don't want to think anyone to think that that's what I'm doing. I'm just asking, is that a sustainable model for the competitiveness, the long-term success, and the perception of FCS programs with the NFL draft? Because Dalton Kincaid, first-round NFL draft pick from Utah, but he played his first 2 years at San Diego, was an FCS All-American, Jerry Rice Award finalist. But guess what? When he got drafted, guess what was behind his name? Utah. Tank Dell, first year playing at Alabama A&M, goes to Houston, balls out, has an unbelievable Senior Bowl week. When he's drafted, Houston's behind that name. That Houston logo is behind his name rather than Alabama A&M. It's just, man, it's just a tough position to be in because I don't think there's like a one true solution or anything like that. It's just at the end of the day, the FCS has to at some point kind of stand up for itself, or like I just want to know what the pitch is because I agree here. Because I'm with Deputy Mario. I don't think you're wrong with this comment. I had a conversation about this today with somebody. Is that a lot of these kids feel like going to Alabama, going to any Power Five school, that the coaching staff, the people around the program do have better connections. They probably do. They could probably vouch for you. They can do all this stuff, but at the same time, man, that's on FCS programs to bring in better coaching staffs as well. You gotta go hire the guys to go get to build those connections. Like if you're in an FCS program, you got to build those connections. But I'm with you, Deputy Mar. That could be a huge point of emphasis to say the least, man. And I just DC said transfer once immediately eligible, but transfer more than once you got to sit out a year. Well, that's actually implemented now. The only people who can transfer more than once and not sit out DC are graduate transfers. Um, Graduate transfers, like the transfer portal windows, none of that applies to graduate transfers. So I mean, they already kind of are putting guardrails in place, but I let's see, the recruiting pitch was and always will be, you can get to the NFL from here. If you have numbers to prove it, that pitch will always work. I'm with you, but the problem is that pitch is getting real thin for some programs, especially at the FCS HBCU level. That pitch D is getting real thin. I really thin because I mean, I just told you 40 something players just got drafted since 2000, 18 of them and like 24 of them from the same like two conferences. So it's just that's the issue, D, is that the list of schools that can really, like North Dakota State, you can pitch that. You absolutely can pitch that for North Dakota State. South Dakota State, probably so too. But once you get past some of these other programs like Jackson State, you can pitch that. Jackson State's had two straight draft picks in the draft. But when you get past that, I mean, name the last player who's the last player to be drafted from Valley? That you probably you got to go back a little bit. Who's the last player to be drafted from? I mean, who you want to throw out there now? Eastern Kentucky. At the end of the day, man, there's not many programs who can hang their hat on. You can get to the NFL from here consistently. Consistently is the key to that recruiting pitch, in my opinion. Simple. How do you feel about the number of FCS players that got undrafted free agent signings? As much as I love that they got the opportunity, Leon, I still think there were a few of them who were good enough to get drafted. But I'm still glad they got the opportunity. What that's showing is that NFL teams are super plugged in. I don't think people talk about that enough. Is that if a player is going to go undrafted, most likely 32 teams know that. The scouts talk, the coaches talk, the GMs talk, the owners talk, all that stuff. Man, at the end of the day, people know who's going undrafted. KJ Black said in the space last night, Xavier Smith started negotiating his undrafted free agent deal in the 4th round yesterday. The 4th round is when he started negotiating. People knew immediately. People start negotiating day 2 on undrafted free agents. So these teams understand it's a huge uphill battle. It's a tough road, but at least you get a shot. And I said this before the draft. Anybody who was not a guaranteed draft pick or didn't get super great feedback from the NFL, if they were drafted by the USFL or XFL, those players should have went and played in the spring. I'm still going to say that. I know not everyone in the chat or watching this may agree. If you were drafted in the XFL or USFL, you should have went and played, because going to play and put on real film against real competition and have a chance to have like a PJ Walker story or something like that is a lot. It's and getting paid thousands of dollars a week to go play football, put on professional film is a whole lot more productive than just sitting there waiting for the draft to come around and just working out as an undrafted free agent. Because we all know game shape and true football shape is different than just training at a gym. And like you have to like real shape playing football week in and week out. You are in different, like anyone in the chat who played football knows you are in a whole different stratosphere of in shape during the season than you were in off-season training. There is no, like, I don't want to take a shot at anybody's. I don't want to call anyone's name out, but y'all know because I got the article on the website. There were 28 FCS prospects in this draft class to get drafted by the USFL, and not a single one of them went. Put that in perspective. Not a single one of them went. You know what they could have, it does not make any sense to me why you wouldn't go do that. Guys, I want to put this in perspective. How many of you in the chat can tell me, because I can't think of one because I'm not a huge NFL guy. How many rookie mini camp invite guys have made it in the NFL? Not undrafted free agents. You didn't sign a contract. You just got an invite to a mini camp. You didn't get an undrafted free agent contract, a priority free agent contract, anything like that. How many guys do you know just to get a mini camp invite made it in the league and was successful and made a roster? I would guarantee it is far and few between. Rookie minicamp is zero. Exactly. And here's Nuggets dad right here. Some calls were made before the draft. Before the draft. I mean, it's so rare. And I want to put this in perspective. Listen, I love this guy. Lindsey Scott Jr., the Walter Payton Award winner, was the number 2 pick in the USFL draft, and he accepted a tryout for the Jets and the Buccaneers over going to play in the USFL. You would rather make zero money, go into a tryout for an NFL team where you could have went and made thousands of dollars a week being the number 2 pick in the USFL draft, which pretty much guaranteed you a starting quarterback spot for that team, and you did not take it. Instead of putting film on there, and by the end of the USFL season, you still could have been at the rookie minicamp that you're going to anyway. That makes zero sense to me. These guys who are just accepting tryouts and rookie minicamp invites, which by the way, they get zero money for that. They would rather take zero money and just and be a camp body and be used like that than go make real money, put on real film, and hopefully be in the exact same place they're sitting there waiting on getting right now. And so is that there? If they're really good, you get the practice squad. Congratulations. Practice squad when you could have been a starter in another professional league, putting on film, potentially making a roster off of that. There is a reason these other leagues play in the spring. It's because these players, if they're good enough, can play in both. If you go to the USFL, XFL for 1-2 years and you're good enough, they can sign you to the NFL and it is no issue. It's just like the Arena League was. I don't understand what is going on. The USFL's average salary is $45K a year, and you got dudes making $0 a week, spending money, probably losing money, negative in their bank account because you got to pay the training facility, you got to pay your agent, you got to pay your trainer, you got to pay for a place to live, and you're making $0 to just sit around and wait for a rookie minicamp invite when you got a guaranteed roster spot on a USFL team. Maybe someone could tell me because I don't get it. To me, it seems like such an easy decision to make for some of these guys, and they're sitting at home doing absolutely nothing, waiting on just pennies, pennies. I don't understand it, man. Thank you. Chris Blair, Alcorn State wide receiver. I believe he plays for the Defenders, if I'm not mistaken. He's going to get that same camp invite, but he's been balling out and they got film, and he has probably a better chance of making the roster than some of these guys who are just taking that mini camp invite because they see it. You got proof of concept in a professional league against guys who played in the NFL at one point, because a lot of the USFL, XFL players are former professional players in the CFL and NFL. And I was talking to Scotty about it, and a few people, including him, had this point in saying, why would these guys risk their bag? Because if you go to the XFL, USFL, and you don't play well, then you mess up your bag, because then you might not get the invite if you go to these leagues and don't play well. My argument would be, is if you're that guy, if you're good enough to make an XFL or good enough to make an NFL roster, if you go to the XFL and USFL, you better be balling, because the talent level isn't as good at the end of the day. If you can't go ball out in the USFL, XFL, you probably weren't going to make that roster anyway, bro. At the end of you got to have an honest conversation with yourself in the mirror. It bothers me so bad when people say that. It's like, why would you not go bet on yourself against talent that you already think you're better than? If you can't ball out in those two leagues, then your shot in the NFL was already zero, and you just validated why you weren't drafted. Because you weren't that dude. You weren't the dude everyone thought you were. So if you're really that guy and you're confident you can make a roster, you're confident you can be a star in the NFL, then you better go ball out somewhere. That's just my opinion. And listen, I get it. It's not always true. Scheme fits. I'm with you. Sometimes there's bad scheme fits, but at the end of the day, talent emerges even without even with bad schemes. Like, if you're really that dude, like if you're a true NFL talent playing in the USFL, XFL, man, like it pops. And I think everyone, because I don't know how many people actually watch the USFL, XFL weekly, you can tell the guys who are going to get a shot at the NFL at the end of the season. Everyone in the chat, you can start naming them. Everyone who has watched the USFL, XFL game knows exactly the player that is going to get that shot at the NFL after the USFL, XFL season's over, because they've been balling out. That's my like main talking point tonight, is I just had to get that off my chest, because it's been bothering me so much, man, because I know how fans are and I know how analysts are and everything. All of us develop and build relationships with these players, regardless of whether it's a fan, media, them personally, whatever it may be. Building relationships with these players, man, you want to see them succeed. You really do. Like, I don't want to see some of the guys that I've been watching over the past few years wind up doing nothing on a professional level. Like, it kills me to see some of the players who were stars at the FCS, stars, and even just in college football in general that I grew up loving to watch, not wind up anywhere because of bad decisions and bad advice and not betting on themselves in terms of what they can go do on the field. So I'm hoping all these guys are super successful, but it just feels like there are so many bad advice, bad decisions being made. Talking to agents at the Jackson Pro Day, what was it? The small school Mississippi Pro Day, whatever. I was talking to a few agents. There were players who had zero shot of getting drafted, guys. I'm talking about, they weren't on a draft board. No one was thinking about them in the NFL draft. They weren't undrafted free agent talents, all this stuff. They were hesitating to sign guaranteed free agent deals with the CFL, because it just of the I guess the mindset of, it's the CFL, not the NFL. I want to go achieve my main goal. Man, at the end of the day, someone's got to be honest with some of these guys, and just, you're not an NFL guy too. Go get the bag in the CFL, XFL, USFL. It's not a bad thing to go play in those leagues. That's not a bad thing. Like, that's still a professional football career where you're making money playing football. Exactly. Ronnie Thomas went and signed that CFL contract, and he's going to go up there and have a field day with those undersized offensive linemen, because he's an absolute speed demon off the edge. Hey, man, something is better than nothing. Always, and pride does hurt a lot of people, man, and I'll say this, when all these extra professional leagues were coming out, I was a little bit skeptical of the quality and the production. I'm gonna tell all you guys in the chat, man, we got almost 400 people in here watching. If you haven't went and watched some of these other professional leagues play on TV and everything like that, the production is up there, and there's some legit talent in there, and it's actually enjoyable to watch. It really is, and I was one of the biggest I was super skeptical. I'm a football guy. It's legit. It's on national TV with solid announcers, graphics, the production quality is A1. There's solid players and a lot of players that everyone in here will probably know. If you haven't checked out an XFL, USFL game, and I'm not getting paid to say this is just my advice to you. If you're a football person, bro, you better go you better go watch you a game, man, because it's amazing to see. I really do enjoy watching it. But let me back up here real quick. The call-in number, I'll go ahead and put it in the chat. 701 put this in the chat. You guys can call in, man, and we'll get down to this, man. Talk a little bit about, because I want to hear your guys' opinion, man. Let me get all this set up. All right, man. We are set up, I believe. So call in number 701-779-9585 for you guys to call in, give your opinion and everything like that. But real quick, I do want to give a shout out to the 11 players drafted. I mean, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I've talked about all these guys on the show before. You had Cody Mock going number 48 to Tampa Bay, Marte Mapu going number 76 to New England, Tucker Kraft going to Green Bay a few picks later, Kobe Turner from Richmond going to the Rams, Kobe Sortasol going to Detroit at 152, BJ Thompson to the Chiefs, Andre Isovas to Cincinnati, Titus Leo going to the Colts, Travis Bell to the Bears, Colton Dowell to Tennessee late, and then Isaiah Bolden, the final pick from Jackson State, headed to New England, man. Let's see. We'll get to our first caller here. 8945. You're live. Oh, hang on. I don't know what's going on with the phone. 1 second. Hang on. 1 second. I don't know what that was. So I'm gonna fire back up the call line in a second. Hang on. I don't know what was going on with their phone. Make sure it wasn't me.
There is one other participant in the conference.
Someone said Ewok called in. Dead. All right, caller, you there?
Yeah, I'm good. It's Doc, man.
Hey, what's up, Doc, man? I don't know what was going on. One of our phones, man, you sounded crazy on the line, man. But what's good, Doc?
Nah, I'm good, bro. Hey, I just want to put it in there for folks who didn't know, like using the USFL or the XFL and the CFL. So remember, Cavante Turpin, Pro Bowler, kick returner for the Cowboys, went to the USFL, balled out, and got his invitation. Another one close to me is my cousin. He was third all time in sacks for New Mexico State. He's on his fourth year in the CFL with the Tiger Cats of Hamilton. Started out his career with Winnipeg, and he's over at Hamilton right now, man, balling. So, and he's saying, he told us he's trying to get to the league. He wants to get to the league, and if it's the way he can get into the league, then so be it. But for those, like you said, for those who didn't get drafted, who knew they weren't gonna get drafted, I would have took that chance with the XFL and the CF, and the USFL, and got money and played and put together a highlight tape.
I'm with you, because I mean, like the worst case scenario, like for me, when you look at a decision, I always look at the best and worst case scenario. Best case, you wind up in the NFL where you always wanted to be, you achieve all your dreams, etc. The worst case is you make thousands of dollars playing a professional sport in another professional league. Like that's the worst case scenario to me. How do you know how many people in the chat right now would sign up for that?
What, man? Please, I'm 43 years old with a bad right knee. I'll go sign for a couple of thousand just to play defensive tackle, just cause. But yeah, man, whoever be advising these kids about the other leagues that's going on right now, they need to fire them ASAP. They need, go with what your heart knows, but also do your research too, man. But
That's
I've
the
been
biggest
listening to
thing.
it. I'm still listening to it, but it's a good show, bro.
Hey, appreciate you, man. Thank you for calling in.
All right.
Shout out to Dot. Man, everyone go make sure to subscribe to his channel. Um so T, I actually found out it actually doesn't close till midnight. I heard it was 5 p.m., but I got told today by someone who from On3 that it technically doesn't close until midnight. So it is not closed yet. And also for anyone who I just want to make sure I repeat this. Graduate transfers can transfer regardless of the portal. Like the portal does not close for graduates. So like Niles Gaddy, he graduated last fall. So he could have announced his transfer in July if he wanted to. And if I'm not mistaken, Debo's also a graduate transfer, so he can just jump in the portal if he wants to too. And I don't know if Doyle's a graduate. Someone will have to tell me in the chat. I haven't really kept up with who's graduated and all that kind of stuff. But graduate transfers, it doesn't matter. You can transfer literally anytime, and as long as you enroll, right before the season, you're fine. Like it doesn't matter. So there's no time limit on graduate transfers. So those are the players you got to watch out for. Are graduates because they literally got the freedom to walk out the back door anytime they want. So that's the worry for a lot of teams. And I just saw this. I was looking while Doc called in. Yeah, so Debo, I want to say Devin Hayes, Jackson State offensive tackle. He also entered the portal today. After the draft. So that is 2 transfers from Jackson. So listen, I don't know Debo personally, but I think it's kind of obvious what's going on, man. What the worry is, and I know for a fact that played into Niles' decision. I was hoping, man, he would stay around. I was hoping he would, but listen, like I said to start the show, man, I can't blame anybody for doing whatever they need to do to further their career, man. Like I can't blame any kid, man. Like, but at the same time, man, I would like some of these guys to stay in the FCS. But 5950, you're live.
Hey, what's going on, Blue and Steve?
What's good, man?
Chilling, man. I just appreciate all your hard work. The bowl games, the spring games, the combines. But I'm just talking about my family Rattlers, Isaiah Land, and X-Men. Did you think that X-Men, I don't know, Isaiah Land played against Southeast Louisiana when he made some sacks, but he was getting handled? Would that be a case? Would that be a case that he get drafted because playing against the SWAT is
Well, Isaiah didn't have a sack that game, if I'm not mistaken. I don't even know if he recorded a tackle.
Okay.
So that game probably hurt him a lot because he was going up against what's the kid's name? His last name's Bell. He was an All-American left tackle for Southeastern. And so I do think that film kind of hurt him. But from what I heard with Isaiah Land is he was playing at 205 to 215. And then on top of that, he only ran a 4.6.
Yeah, that hurts.
Because here's the argument. If you're going to be an undersized linebacker, we need you in the 4.4 range.
Right.
You got to be able to
Right.
move. And so when you're running a 4.6, you're already extremely undersized in terms of weight. And then in the biggest game of your career on that stage, you didn't do anything. So it that hurt him.
Yes, sir. And also, real quick, I know he signed with Dallas, but you got Michael Parsons, you got Jabril Cox from North Dakota State and LSU, and now he's gonna rotate you. Right. I mean, I know they can keep like 3 to 4, 7 linebackers and 7 linemen, but I know it's a 53-man roster, but game day is 46 men.
Yeah. So what I heard today is the confidence
Yes, sir.
isn't high on that.
Okay.
I think he can make a roster somewhere. I just don't know if it's with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
So that's the only issue. Well, listen, he easily could he could make it in terms of a practice squad his first year, work his way onto the roster, but
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to. I don't know if he's going to have the same type of ascension as a James Houston does, because they're two
Okay.
totally different players.
Yes, sir. All right, Blue Man. Thanks for taking my call. Have a great weekend. All right.
Yep. Hey, appreciate you, man.
All right.
9020, you're live.
Hey, Zach, love the show, first of all, sir.
Appreciate you, man.
I think you make some great points. I love all the points that you was making. And I just kind of want to, give some perspective in regards to the HBCUs. The Dallas Cowboys head of scouting, Will McClay, he mentioned one reason why he liked, getting FAMU guys is because they play FBS competition. And he liked the way they run their program at FAMU. And that's one reason why he picked land, but he hated that land didn't get a chance to play against North Carolina. And that hurt him, not being able to play in the game. And Will McClay stated that. And the Cowboys, and just in case you're not a Cowboys fan, they normally keep 2 or 3 linebackers on the practice squad. So when you're talking about the team, the way Dan Quinn does it, last year, Dan Quinn kept 7 linebackers on the roster and had 3 practice squads, so a total of 10. He loved tweeners. He loved guys that can move around, have a little pass rush, can play Will, can play Sam. So, I think he's going to have a good chance. But at HBU as a whole, if my team or even FCS does not play a FBS team, then I have to do like you said, go to the Canadian Football League, go to XFL, go to USFL to get that competition that they're looking for. They're trying to see, do you belong? If you don't do that, how can you show them otherwise?
You made a good point, because I didn't even mention, and it kind of slipped my mind that Isaiah didn't play against North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I totally forgot about that. And that was a huge game for him. Like you said, that was prime time, week 0. That could have been a huge game against some 5-stars. So I agree
That's
with
right.
you. That definitely hurt him. And, I will say this. Yes, playing steeper competition helps. You see the Kobe Durant's, the Titus Howards, those guys. But I do want to take a step back from saying that it, like I said earlier, it doesn't always work for everybody. Because there are a lot of guys who went out there, performed really well against P5 teams, and still didn't get drafted. But Isaiah Land really did get hurt by not playing that UNC game, especially after the year before he didn't perform well against Southeastern Louisiana. That's the issue too, is that at the end of the day, man, you had all the eyes on you. You had a chance to go show out against the Walter Payton Award winner, and you didn't sniff them. And that's an issue.
And I think Scott even mentioned with Jackson State, they had an open date when Deion was there to play a Group of 5 team, and they chose not to. Just imagine if they would have played. In my heart, I think all 3 of those guys at Jackson State would have got drafted besides Bolton, to me, if he just did that. but who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to say that. I mean, listen, it could have helped at the end of the
Right.
day, but like I said, man, there's so many variables that you have to check off. Like I still, in my opinion, it's impossible to create a checklist of stuff you have to do to get drafted because you kind of need just the perfect mix of like all these different factors to happen. Plus, like what we saw with Isaiah not being on the radar for one of the Ram scouts, man, if the scout just didn't do their due diligence and find you, then at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what you do. If you're not even on their radar, then it really like at the like what are you to do?
That's right. And then I think, like you said, for the HBCUs as a whole, they have to upgrade their facilities for their players to be able to compete. Like to me, when I took my son seeing schools before he picked the school he went to, Prairie View A&M to me had one of the best HBCUs facilities that I've seen. I mean, it looked like a FBS facility, but we visited some other places. I'm like, wow, I was shocked at what I saw. But they have to do that first and get a nutrition plan as well if they're trying to help their guys get to the next level.
You see, like I'm with you that needs to happen, but the problem is the problem is, man, like a lot of these programs aren't getting that type of funding.
True.
So, like, yes, that's something that needs to happen, but at the end of the day, unless someone in here is writing that check to support that, then it's tough to say that you just got to go out there and build a nutrition plan, hire nutritionists, build new facilities because, like, man, that takes so much. Like, I mean, there's programs like people in the chat would think have so much money
Right.
that are just now building facilities that they need. The North Dakota states, the Montana states, like they needed indoor facilities forever. North Dakota State just got the money to do that. And so it as much as that, yes, that would help. Like there are so many external factors, man, that would prevent that from happening first, if that makes sense. Like you're right in terms of that would help, but there are so many things behind the scenes of why that can't happen just because of funding and things like that.
And my thing is not only for the development, but for recruiting. If you're trying to recruit a kid to come to your school, I at least want my facilities to be up to par to where they're trying to go. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, but I don't. It's just a tough conversation to have until, like, you still got to address there's just a lot to talk about in that one. But hey, man, I'm gonna get to these last few callers, man. But I appreciate you calling in, man.
Thank you, Zach. Bye.
0316, you're live.
Thank you, Blue, for taking my call.
Hey, for sure, man. Appreciate you calling in.
Hey, Blue, I should say, man, I watched you yesterday with on the 1400 Club, and you was also 1400 Club with Ken Clark, and you were showing a lot of emotion, and I really appreciate everything that you do. Can you hear me?
Yeah, man, you're good now. You kind of went away from the phone there for a second, but I got you loud and clear now.
Okay. Okay, well, this is Dr. Cowley with Urban Marketing Las Vegas, and I hear you talk about the nutritionist, and I just want you to expound on, there was, I think it was 85 when Jerry Rice came out from Mississippi Valley. We know there was not a nutritionist at the time with Jerry Rice when he was attending schools, and I'm just looking at the guys today, and I also know 10 years later, Steve McKinnell was at Alcorn State University when they came out, and they didn't have nutritionists. It was, a 10-year difference between both guys, and they both were drafted in the first round. Can you kind of like explain the difference, that 10 years apart of Steve McKinnell and Jerry Rice?
I think, listen, I'll be honest, those are outliers. Like, I mean, you're talking about two generational talents that happen to be playing at HBCUs at the FCS level. Like the guys like Jerry Rice, Steve McNair, Cooper Cups, those type of players, they only come once every few years. Like that is so hard. Like I don't feel like that should be the baseline. Those are like the outliers. So like if you ever took stats class, you got the bell curve. Those are the guys way right on the bell curve. Like no one compares to the McNairs, the who you want, the Jerry Rices, the Walter Paytons, the Cooper Cups. Like these are legends. Man, it's so hard to say that like you can't use those guys as data points if you understand what I'm trying to say. Like they're so far out there and they were so amazing that the average player can't relate to that.
They're so far out there, they're so amazing. The average player can't relate to that.
I believe you're absolutely right. I support that there. But what do you say to these young guys who was undrafted? And I could see that you and Ken almost broke down and cried myself when I watched you guys yesterday, because you guys was fighting so hard in the fourth round, like a championship round of boxing, and only Bolton was drafted. What do you say to the guys? Because you see what God and every guys are doing. They all want to take off and leave from the FCS. We know there was only, one guy or two guys drafted overall. So it was not just the HBCU. So you really need to step out and put some help on those young brothers who's watching, because they're packing their bags. Please give them some positive to live on.
Hey man, I appreciate you calling in, man. I'll hit that in just a second, but I appreciate you calling in, man.
Appreciate it, Blue. Thank you.
I think I talked about this a little bit earlier. Then Timona, I'm getting to you, and then 7166, I'll get to you. I mean, I don't know what to tell. Like I told you guys earlier, I don't know what the pitch is, because the pitch has always been that the scouts will find you anywhere. And there's some schools you can say that, but the list of schools that have a real argument at the FCS level in terms of we consistently produce NFL talent is very low. Like when you look at the breakdown, like I said earlier, 18 of the 40-something FCS picks since 2020 have come from one conference. The Big Sky and MVFC have accounted for over 50%. So I don't know what the message would really be. Like I'm not going to tell a player that if they think transferring is what's best for them, that is what it is, man. That's the point of player movement, player freedom. And I think everyone in the chat, including myself, has always said the transfer portal should have always been around. But I don't know what the pitch would be. I would like to know what your guys' pitch would be, if you have one. What's up, Timona? You're live.
Hey, how you doing, Blue?
I'm doing good. Doing good.
I'm surprised at the number of kids that are waiting to the last minute to hop into the portal. Just go ahead and go get in the portal and make the announcement. You don't have to string it out. But I thought it was interesting that people are saying, that kids should just rush to the FBS as if that is supposed to resolve the issue and that they're supposed to get drafted. Like Duke for 2 years straight hasn't had a NFL draft pick. Colorado hasn't had a draft pick either. There was a tight end that did get an undrafted free agent contract, but they didn't get a pick either. Arizona didn't get a pick. Indiana, Kansas, Vanderbilt. So TCU last year, they didn't have a draft pick. And then they come out this year and they have a lot of draft picks. So I think my issue with making this notion that HBCUs, it's like the FCS overall as a whole saw a big reduction in the amount of draft picks this year.
Yeah, no, this was, like I said, this was one of the second lowest drafts since like 94. So like it definitely was. So I will say the reason for the late announcements is because I know for a fact both of those guys transferred because of what happened this weekend.
But
that
the
was
way
their
you
reason.
explained it, it seems like there were valid reasons for why they weren't drafted.
Yeah, but when
You
you
said that they
look at
didn't do good on their, like, Aubrey's pro day, his time was slow. Or for who else?
Isaiah
I guess you
Land,
said
his
Isaiah Land
size.
didn't do good at the combine.
No,
And
I'm
he
with
was
you.
lacking film and production.
There's reasons, but you have to look at it from these players' perspectives because I mean, let's be honest. Everyone can think of a player who said they saw drafted this weekend with no stats, no production, no accolades, and you see the
Mhm.
FCS guys who go, they have to do 15 times more than what the average group of 5 or P5. Yes, like there are FBS schools that didn't send anyone to the draft. I'm with you. That always happens. That's why I said there's not one.
Especially like Incarnate Word. The problem that I have with the narrative is the people that they're telling us that we have to play in order to get drafted, they didn't have draft picks either.
No, I think that's fair. That's why I didn't really put that on the list in terms of like, scheduling or anything like that. It's not one thing. Like that's why I think people are oversimplifying it where they focus on the schedule. They focus on the exposure. They focus on the all-star game invites. They always focus on one point or the next when really and truly you have to have a perfect mix of things to be drafted. Like it's not just did your school schedule FCS out of conference games? Did your school schedule FBS games? That's why at the beginning that list I compiled.
Incarnate Word did all of that and they did not get it.
Oh, I know.
What
But when you
and
look at the
then
players,
once again, South Dakota State or outside
yeah,
of Cody, everybody else was undrafted free agent signings. They did have like 3 or 4, but they were in the same boat. Are they going crazy too because of
no.
the amount of players that didn't get drafted?
No, because when you look at it in totality, North Dakota State has had 5 straight years of draft picks. So they don't care.
All
And
right.
all of them have been early in the draft, including multiple top 5 picks and a first round pick and 2 straight second round picks. Because like you got to look at it like this. Isaiah Bolden went 15 picks from last in the draft. If Isaiah
Mhm.
Bolden goes second round, are people freaking out like they are?
Right.
That's the difference.
And then another thing is the HBCU Legacy Bowl. I wanted to talk about that because I felt like it gave a lot of people a chance to get exposure. Like Cameron Peterson, I had never heard of him. He played at the Legacy Bowl. I think Emmanuel Boone,
Yeah, he
he
did.
received an invite. He played in the Legacy Bowl. Raymond Boone got a camp invite. He plays at Bowie State University, or
Yeah,
he received a camp invite.
Yeah, he did.
It was like 5 or 6 players from there that played in that particular game, and they either received an undrafted free agent signing or Keenan Isaac.
Yeah.
He played in that. He received an undrafted free agent signing. Because there's a lot of people that had negative things to say about that combine. But for me, I feel like if you get 5 or 6 people and they're able to get signed, that's a bigger step than what they had. Because did you have them on your radar?
Yeah. I mean, well, I definitely had Keenan Isaac, and I don't cover D2 football. So like
Right. Joshua Pryor's defensive line, he received an undrafted free agent as well.
Yeah. No, well, I'm with that. The reason I say that is different though is because the reason it was created, I'm just going based on what they told us in the press conference. The point of the Legacy Bowl and the Combine was to get more HBCU players drafted. It has not resulted in
Right.
that. And so that's the issue.
So, but for me, I would think that you would have to be on these scouts' radars because that's like the last
time to do it,
the
pretty
last
much.
goal right before they do pro days. So you would need to be on their radar, which means I don't know if it's HBC Legacy Bowl that needs to do it, the NFL, or the people who are saying that they're trying to help HBCUs. What is it called where they allow they have scouts come in and they do all of the things that they do for the NFL Combine, but they do it for kids who aren't eligible and they tell them what they need to work on?
Like the junior days?
There's a name for it.
Like
it's like a junior.
Yeah.
So they need to do that for HBCUs basically a year ahead of time. So number one, you need to know what you need to work on, but then you're on their radar.
They do
because
that
these
for
particular
FCS programs.
Players, I've never seen them do it specifically for HBCUs. They probably do it. I saw Deion Sanders do it on his documentary. That's how Aubrey Miller knew what it is that he needed to work on. Or maybe he just participated in it and then decided not to declare for the draft. Is that what that was? Yeah,
so Prime did that, and they did it again this year with TC.
No, they did the pro day. They allowed people who weren't going to the draft to participate too.
No, not that pro day that I went to. They had one that they didn't publicize because Niles Gaddy and those guys got feedback for their junior day performances. Like programs do it typically, but they just don't publicize it because at the end of the day, it doesn't really count for anything because those guys aren't going to the draft that year. Like programs do it all the time to get feedback and promote their players, but I still don't know if that's the key because like you said, you do have to be on the radar, but these guys are sending the scouts, and like KJ said last night, who works for the Rams, he's worried that guys are sending the scouts to the Legacy Bowl and stuff just to check a box.
Right. So that would be a part of the organization saying, we don't really care about this bowl game. Let's just send them. But what I'm saying is not Keenan Isaac, but like, for instance, Nugget didn't have that much film from this past season because he didn't play a lot. But the fact that he was able to participate in the combine and the fact that he was able to participate in the bowl game, I think that put him on the radar for the Bears to pick him up.
It definitely could have.
So,
I'm not saying
so it
that
might not be that specific scout from the LA Rams because maybe they already knew who they were going after. But for some of those young men to be able to participate in that and to see 5 or 6 of them being able to get that, maybe it's a step. They need to do something else aside from that. But to think that someone's going to get drafted just off of seeing them one time and they're not on the radar, that's a little far-fetched.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I don't know what the next step is for the Legacy Bowl and Combine. I was just going off because if you take a bunch of conferences and players that the scouts and the teams don't value, because let's just be honest, the NFL looks down on FCS HBCU talent. So if you take a bunch of talent that no one respects and make them all play each other, I don't know if that generates as much respect as people want to give it credit for in terms of the people running the Legacy Bowl. They think that game is the key to getting more players drafted, when if the NFL is already not respecting the players in the game, then how does performing well against players the NFL doesn't already care about and the NFL doesn't care about you? I don't understand. I feel like that's counterproductive to the ultimate goal of the Legacy Bowl. That's all I was saying. I'm not saying that it's completely pointless or anything. I'm just saying the issue starts with getting scouts to respect the talent in those conferences, because until they do, that game isn't going to serve the purpose that everyone wants it to.
Okay. But it's a good show, Blue.
Hey, I appreciate you calling in, Timona. Make sure to go subscribe to She Loves Thee. Her and Doc always do a show together and everything. So I'm going to go 8695 1547 and then anonymous for the next three callers. 8695. You're live.
Hey, Blue, what's going on, man?
What's up, man?
Nothing much. So I just wanted to have this dialogue with you about something that the guy last night said. He did talk about the coaching that is in the HBCU space, even in some FCS schools outside of, the North Dakota states, the South Dakota states, things of that nature. Like I've seen, like I played at the FBS level. When we played against HBCU teams or FCS teams, those were the games that everybody knew they were going to play. The game plan was very vanilla. And 9 times out of 10, that game was over midway through the second quarter. So if other colleges are looking at another college team like that, what he said, it holds a lot of weight to how the receivers, they run different route trees. They're not very crisp. A lot of that stuff is very, very raw. So I really wanted to get your thoughts on that.
That's an interesting conversation to have, to be honest, because I'm not going to try to single out any teams or coaches, man. I don't want to do that. But let's just be honest. You can look around college football. You don't even have to keep it in the FCS level. You can include FBS schools. We can name the offenses and the defenses that are better suited to develop players for the NFL, whether it's the route tree, whether it's the technique and fundamentals of the quarterback, whether it's the blocking scheme, whether it's the type of defense they run in terms of versatility. Are you running that 3-4, 4-3, 4-2-5, 3-3-5, whatever it may be? Are you playing nickelback? Are you playing safety? Are you playing corner, slot corner? What techniques are they teaching? There's so many variables that you can throw into that conversation that off the top of your head, you can probably already name the programs that are going to be more suited to preparing players for the next level. And so I think that goes into kids being more educated about where they're committing. You need to go to places that are developing you as a player. Because we can both name, I don't want to call anyone out, we both can name at least 5 universities off the top of our head that do a poor job of developing talent. That's the issue. And that goes into the players making that right decision. Don't commit for the facilities. Don't commit because your friend's there. Don't commit because of location. Don't commit for all these external reasons. Do they develop talent? Do they send guys to the league? Are there NFL connections in the building in terms of coaching staff? You have to check all these important boxes before you get to the auxiliary boxes of extracurricular stuff. And I think that's what and it's tough to have this conversation because you are talking about 18-year-olds making this decision. So,
and I kind of look at it at the schools too, because as you and I know, there's a lot of graduate assistants on some of these big time programs that are out there. They're looking for opportunities, man, and they have a lot of smart guys that wind up doing big things. I think you've talked about him. Brennan Marion's one of them. He's notorious for the go-go offense. People like that are in these buildings, and it's like they're overlooked. And a lot of those guys would rather go coach at the D2, D3 level and use a connection down the road to get back at the Power 5 level than to go to the FCS or HBCU route and be stuck there.
Yeah, that's a big thing because there are good coaches at the FCS level. But if you're a great coach at the FCS level, the clock is ticking on when one of these big programs or even the NFL is going to call you. Look at KJ Black. Hell of a coach. The Rams came knocking. And you can't turn down an opportunity like that. So you got to look at all that. But let's just be honest. When you have the conversation about who is QBU, RBU, wide receiver U, cornerback, DBU, linebacker U, that's what you got to talk about. Who are producing players at those positions? Like, let's be honest. Is there a better program in the FCS right now at developing offensive linemen than North Dakota State?
Absolutely not.
Zero. I mean, there's no argument right now that they are developing offensive linemen at a ridiculous rate, man. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then when you look around, I mean, you can even go full defensive with sometimes. UNI is doing a hell of a job developing offensive linemen. There were a time where wide receiver U in the like early 2000s, Eastern Washington was just putting out wide receivers left and right. They were developing some wide receivers, and so I think kids got to do more, or student athletes have to do more research on that, man. If you're an offensive lineman, why are you going to a program that doesn't develop good offensive linemen?
Doesn't make any sense. Yeah, man. I just think like even if everybody's honest and you're an Auburn fan and you watch the Auburn Alabama game and you watch not just the actual intricate stuff about it, like the scheme, the blocking assignments. If you watch that game and then you turn that off and go watch, I don't know, name 2 SWAC schools, there's a clear and concise difference in that game and what's going on. Meanwhile,
I'm with you, man. There's some schools across the country that they aren't developing talent, man. It's because of coaching, and there's some really, really good coaches out there, man. I think that's the biggest thing. As we talked earlier, someone put in the comments is that NFL connections for coaches where people can make that call for you. So let's say you don't get drafted or you're coming up in the NFL draft as a prospect, having that coach that knows the scout at the Patriots or the Rams, like, man, that is invaluable. And so I'm with you, man, but I'm gonna get to these last few callers. I appreciate you calling in, man.
Yes, sir.
1547, you're live.
1 second. I'm lagging behind your show. 1 second. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, man, loud and clear.
All right, perfect. So I watched the draft. A lot of us were not drafted. Yes, you think that's mostly because scouts are being lazy because like again, it's undrafted free agent signing. HBCU FCS, and do you think mostly because like the name of the program choosing from, especially the 7th round?
I would say, like I said earlier, man, it's a combination of so many things. It's a combination of players making mistakes or not checking off a box that's important to certain franchises. It's the laziness of the scouts because there's like I said, there's no reason these scouts shouldn't have some of these prospects on the board. Like for Isaiah Bolden to get drafted and a scout say you didn't know him is unacceptable. And then there's infatuation with P5 universities where if a guy's going to take a chance on his career and take a chance on a prospect in the 6th round, he would rather take a chance on a guy who was playing at Tennessee rather than take a chance on a kid at Stephen F. Austin. That's an issue. So I think it's a combination of everything, man. I don't think you can just pin it on one thing.
I understand, but I guess schools like what Word, like season how great they did, or like North South Dakota State, like I think we're going to agree like those schools had at least 3 or 4 that at least qualified, at least in like the last 2 rounds. I mean, so I don't know, just like every year, it's just frustrating to see how I think other players that are doing better than some of these Power 5 athletes are like it feels like they're trying to get his motivation lower. And then when they beat them out and make the roster, they don't got pinned much. It's just a little frustrating from time to time.
I'm with you. I get the frustration. Like, I don't blame anyone who's frustrated about the situation because, I mean, the transparency is so low. Like, unless someone in the chat, myself, can get a hold of a scout, a GM, whatever, and get their scouting report, nobody can really necessarily pinpoint exactly what it is, why a player did or did not get drafted. And that's the thing I think it's hard for a lot of fans to rationalize, to be honest with you, man. But hey, I appreciate you calling in, man.
And look, one more thing before I forget. I think to answer a question, there was a report, I think, from HBCU Sports where they talked to a scout where I think they actually addressed that. I can't recall exactly, but I think from the Twitter. So I would recommend if you or anyone in the chat want to see it, look it up. I think they actually addressed that exact issue.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I'm gonna go look for that on Twitter after the show.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anonymous, you're live.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, man, loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, man. I think it's just basically a lot of excuses. You got guys that you said that guys don't want to risk their job, but for the most part, for your money, you actually fare better because a lot of these guys from the FCS can actually strike them big and actually have like par for par on average. FCS guys tend to have better careers than not the first round or like the blue chips, but the guys that are just like backups or not out of the first round, Power Five or what's the other one, Group of Five. Some of these guys don't pan out. Like they actually are a lot of flops. So I think that's just an excuse for like lazy scouts, man. I think they would actually miss on guys like Jerry Rice nowadays.
I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, I don't know about Jerry Rice just because of the insanity.
Well, yeah, Jerry Rice tape was crazy, but
yeah, I mean,
I'm
there's
just
definitely
using him as an excuse.
I'm with you. I agree. I definitely think sometimes we let the scouts off the hook, but I don't understand why they get more leeway drafting Power Five guys. Like to me, it doesn't make any sense at the end of the day because, like you said, there's so many busts at the P5 level, but it's really on the GMs and the people who are hiring and firing these scouts is that they're more likely to fire a guy who miss on a prospect out of Princeton, where if you miss on 3 scouts out of Georgia, you get a little bit of leeway, or 3 players
Yeah,
out
that
of
just
Georgia.
doesn't make sense to me.
I'm
Like the
with you.
fact, what proved it to me last year was that multiple people that just watched, like people that didn't even watch all college football, that just watched primarily FCS and HBCU, we all seen that James Houston should have been a draft pick. Like that to me was no clear pick. Like when they missed on that and picked him in the 6th round, I was like, these guys don't know what the hell they're doing. Like they're literally like that didn't surprise me with what you said about the guy that works at the Rams and he used to be at FAMU. Like that sounds about right. It's obvious in the way they're picking. I mean, and I don't know if you put it on the GMs or the scouts specifically because they're the ones out in the field. I just feel like it's not the same. Like in the early 2000s, it will be no way these guys are a clear pick that we can all see is just a baller. Like I don't care about measurables. None of that shit means anything to me because my whole life I held that and that these guys have been rated and they're ass once you get on the field. So I just believe a football player. Like you can look, if you know football, you can look at somebody and tell if they can play football. Now the quarterback is a little bit different, but I feel like for all those other skill positions, lineman a little bit more trickier. But if you can play football, man, you can play football, and it's an eye test. And that's to me the definition of a good scout.
Man, I love it. And also, there are some scouts who, I mean, there's franchises, let's be honest, that where throughout their history, they make a lot of bad selections. I mean,
Yeah.
regardless of on how many people they reach on, they're always bad. Like we can name them, the Lions, the Bears, like some of these, they have zero ability to hit on any diamonds in the rough.
Miami.
I'm a Dolphins fan, man. That one kind of hurt, but you are right on that.
I mean, you guys are going to 80s. I thought you guys were getting your second win because you had a good draft to me this year. I think you guys got some good players this year, but I don't know. I don't know if it's too much analytics, too much Amazon stuff, or whatever. But I feel like they're making it too technical. Like it's become too much nerd shit in getting away from football. Like and also I was going to say, we said the big schools. It's almost becoming like a SEC Big Ten feeder. Like it's not even a draft; it's just a feeder system almost, and it just takes the parity out of it. Like a guy like Bruce Smith, or it's just so many gems that just went in the late rounds or were like unsigned free agents. And it's like I don't feel that now. I just feel like they just gotten way too lazy and just picked like the first guys that pop. Now I got some nerves because I'm an Eagles fan and we got some pretty high status picks, but We'll see, man. We'll see how it pans out.
Hey, man, I appreciate you calling in, man.
Take care.
Seven 166. You're live.
Yeah, what's going on, Blue Kid?
Yep, got you loud and clear, man.
All right, what's going on? This is Leo, man. Hey, first of all, I want to say, good show as always, man. And you know, to put everything in perspective, first off, you know, it's difficult to make to the NFL, period. You know what I mean? 'Cause I mean, like, you know, Ringo was talked about at Georgia for, you know, the past 3 years, and he went to the fourth round. So, you know, I don't want to lose that perspective. But I think, I mean, from what I see, from what it seems like the past couple years, what the NFL is basically telling you is like, you know, you gotta, you know, be superhuman and put up, you know, like, you gotta put up amazing stats. You gotta flash off the film and have the measurables. Making the FCS is what it seems like. I mean, what was the guy? I think his name was Troy Anderson or something. I think the guy you was talking about last year.
Montana
was
State.
a 3-time All-American.
Yeah, Montana State. Troy Anderson. He played linebacker and he was a former running back.
Yeah, and see, like, and that's what I'm saying. It seems like you gotta have like some unreal things going on about you. Because I mean, if somebody was to do that at the FBS level, I mean, hell, I don't see them not being a first round pick. But I mean, like, stuff like that is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like you just gotta be basically a 4-time All-American every year you've been to college and put up, you know, unreal stats just to get a chance. You know, it's real wild. But I mean, it's tough, man. I mean, I don't know what to say about some of these, you know, kids. Like, you know, it's unfortunate, but I think the more coverage and I think the more coverage we get, you know, with social media and stuff, I don't. It should help, but I don't think it's helping. Like, kind of like what you were saying, you know, scouts are being a little bit lazier. I think with all the media coverage that, you know, these big programs getting on ESPN all the time, stuff like that, I think they're just kind of like, you know, looking at that and they're just kind of like thumbing through maybe some of the other scouts. I mean, you know, some of the other recruits, you know, and it's unfortunate, you know, because I think, you know, the old saying was, you know, if you can ball, you know, they'll find you. But I don't think that's the case nowadays because, like, you know, like you said, I mean, this scout that's not even knowing some of these players' names, and they're, you know, playing bowl games in the same state. So I think it's a disservice. But, you know, it's basically like, you know, if you're not putting up superhuman stats, I mean, you might as well. I can't even say transfer because that's not even a guaranteed option to make it. But I wanted to touch on another thing you had said too, about you know, the USFL and the XFL. Like, I completely agree with you. I think that anybody that's not, you know, that didn't make it, you know, or that got drafted and didn't participate, they're doing themselves a disservice. You know, I go all over the country, and I mean, no matter what, you know, casino I'm in, no matter what bar I'm in, you see those games all the time. Those XFL and USFL games, they showed up on TV all the time. It's marketed on social media, like when you're in those big markets, they market it very well. So now you're going to get a whole lot of eyes, you know, if you take that chance and, you know, go to those smaller leagues, you know, like, because you're not guaranteed, even if you got a name to go to the league. I mean, Chris Carter's son played in the CFL, you know, so I mean, like, if you got that belief in yourself, I say you definitely need to at least take that chance and bet on yourself, you know, and show and prove, you know, because I mean, if you were struggling in those leagues, you wasn't going to do nothing in the league anyway. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there. That's my take. I just want to say, you know, keep on doing your thing, bro.
Appreciate you, man. I'm gonna get to 3363 and 5936 for the last two calls, but I do want to say one thing. I get what Dave is saying in the chat. Like, you might not have to be a superstar because consistency is the key. Before I get to the last two calls, I'm gonna read these stats. This player from the FCS was not a first round pick, but I want you to take these stats, put them on an FBS player, and tell me that he would not be the first player in the NFL draft taken in his year. He finished his career with 428 catches for 6,500 yards receiving, 73 touchdowns, and averaged over 100 yards receiving every single year he played, including his true freshman year. Was a two-time FCS National Player of the Year, won the Jerry Rice Award as a true freshman. He was a four-time, so from freshman until senior, a consensus first team FCS All American. And he was not drafted in the first round. I was going to let that sit for a second. What else could an FCS player possibly do to get drafted? I mean, could you imagine an FBS player putting up those stats? And for those who don't know, I know a few people put in the chat, that was Cooper Kupp stats at Eastern Washington. Cooper Kupp. And he has the measurables. He has the speed. But you have a historic career. He broke so many of Jerry Rice's records, and he could not break into the first round. I don't know. I don't know what else you got to do, man. So I just wanted to put that in perspective for people on how amazing of a career you had. And don't even let me pull up Eric Berrier and Cole Kelly's stats from their time in the FCS. Bro, I can't give you this. How tall is King? I'm about to pull this up because Cooper Kupp is 6'2". Emmett. Cooper Kupp is 6'2". 6'2", and put up those stats. He just won Super Bowl MVP. Size was not the issue, bro. He was 6'2". The size was, if you can't be 6'2", then nobody better be mad about Xavier Smith and those guys being drafted because they were definitely not even 6 foot. There's no chance. 6'2" in those stats, and you're still making excuses for that guy not being drafted first round. Come on, man. Get these last two callers in. 3363, you're live.
Hey, Blue, how you doing, buddy?
What's up, man?
Nothing much, sir. Loving your show. And I'm sorry I kind of caught the tail end of this, so if I made some points someone else made, please forgive me in advance. I'm saying about the FCS transporter hunting FCS football. I think that kind of started before this year, because wasn't that I think it was Jabril Cox who transferred from North Dakota State to go to LSU because he was concerned about his draft stock. Was that him that did that?
Wasn't that
about 5 years ago? That was.
Oh, he plays for the. Does he play for the Cowboys? I want to say he plays for the Cowboys. He's a linebacker.
Yes.
Oh God, Dave, put it in the chat because Dave's my North Dakota State guy. Who was the linebacker that transferred to LSU? Because I remember there was another one who went to West Virginia, but who was the kid that went to LSU? He's a linebacker for the Cowboys. But man, you can continue. Dave will comment and I'll jump in with it.
Okay, and then the other thing that I'm seeing as well, we talked about this.
Jabril Cox. I want to throw in there. Jabril Cox is the name.
We talked about. Gotcha. I'm sorry about feedback. My bad. But I'm saying it's like 11 FCS players and 1 D2 player were drafted. Now I think there were 13 conferences in FCS and 18 in Division II. That's like 31 conferences of sports altogether, and you're only getting 12 total players. The reason why I mention that is because so many people are making this about, oh my goodness, this is about HBCUs. Folks need to stop that stuff, because all the leagues that if you're not FBS, you are getting slammed. And then there's something else that was mentioned as well. This goes to something called scheduling. And we thought FCS, you know this stuff too. Whenever like you see other schools that talk about the like big FBS team and say, okay, we get a chance to show what we got, we get a chance to get our name out there, get a chance to make a difference, we get a chance to maybe beat these guys. But with us, we say, oh my goodness, why are we playing these games? We don't want to get embarrassed, we don't want our guys hurt, etc. So it's like people, they run away from these kind of games. These are the kind of games that get you exposure. And then you find every single excuse not to play them. Or you create these other games. Now, of course, people talk about the bowls and everything. One caller mentioned, yes, they talked about, okay, well, someone did good in Legacy Bowl. I'm sorry, but an all-star game with FCS and D2 players, is that really the best example to use to try to get pro scouts to look at you?
No, I was letting you go, man. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were waiting on me. Now I've
No,
already
you good.
said that I'm not a. I get it now with the Legacy Bowl. I will say though, man, like with the schedules, at first I was on that train, man. Last year I was hammering the SWAC on scheduling, man. Everyone in the chat could tell you I was hammering it. But after talking to scouts, after talking to some agents, like I've really tried to engulf myself in the like scouting process because I've really been racking my brain on this. It really and truly, man, that's not the scheduling does matter to some scouts, but other scouts they don't care. So I've kind of changed my
Okay.
tune on that a little bit. Like, yes, if you're Jacoby Durant, get 2 picks against Clemson, it absolutely can get you drafted. But there's other guys who go ball out against Power 5 programs and they don't get drafted. And because like I always say, like the first key from what I was told is if you're not on NFL scouts radars by the late sophomore, early junior year, you're screwed for the most part.
That actually makes sense. Okay. Thanks, Blue. That's all I have, man.
Hey, appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Carey could tell you, I think I saw his comment earlier real quick before I get to this last caller. He was like, man, I was on scheduling hard, but I've really kind of toned that off, man. Listen, after talking to people, that really is just like a fragment of what they really look at. And it's not like a one size fit all, man. So I have backed off of that. Like someone tried to like troll and like screenshotted something I said like over a year ago and was like, this is the problem. I was like, bro, like it's over a year ago, man. We've kind of changed tunes, but 5936, you're live.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, man, you're loud and clear.
I'm calling about the draft. You got a good program going, Blue, and Scotty has a good program going too. But see the things that people don't understand. When you see a good player playing, it's not.
Hey man, will you turn down your background? Like turn down if you're watching the stream in the background, just turn it off and you can just talk to me through the phone.
All right. When you see a good player playing, like Isaiah Lane, R.B. Miller, and that player that got picked in the 7th round, and you think they are draftable, because Isaiah Lane had 3 choices. They gave him 3 choices. He had the Senior Bowl and he had the combine, and he was given 2 chances. He still didn't run this necessary time to get drafted as an edge rusher. If he would have ran a 4.3, 4.4, he would have got drafted, other than a free agent. No SWAC school has a linebacker that runs a 4.3. The linebacker time is 4.5 on down to 4.3. If you running if you wide receiver, 4-4 down to 4-3, 4-2, cornerback, 4-5 down to 4-2. You can't get drafted unless you come from a small school running that time. You have to run 4-3s. 4-3s. Man, if I cover a player from the Power 5, if he weak in the 40, I don't let him run the 40. I show all the skills that he have, but if he run the 4-5, that I don't let him run because it easily turned into a 4-6. 4-6. And the SWAC schools, HBCU schools, they have to run every event. They should get a player personnel, pro player personnel developer for this HBCU. Alcorn hasn't had a player drafted in I don't know when, but when you get a player, you think he's draftable. You have to make him draftable because the school depends on the schools depend on draft picks because no one wants to come there if they don't have no draft pick because you have to develop a player. If he's a good wide receiver, you have to develop that player from a 4-5 to a 4-3. And the best that the HBCUs can do is the 4th round to the 7th round. Just take a player like Steve McNair, Jerry Rice, to be drafted in the 1st round, and you have to ball out to be a 1st rounder. I have trained 5 players that's into the NFL, right? A couple was free agents because I thought they was gonna go maybe 4th or 5th round, but they was good. But you have to be exceptional good because I can line up the DBs in the SWAC, HBCUs, and they can run a 4-4 on down to a 4-6, but not no 4-3s and 4-2s. You have to run a 4-2 if you want to get drafted in the 4th round of the 6th round, 4th round of the 3rd round. You have to dominate your position at that level of play. If you don't dominate your position at that level of play, you stand a chance not to get drafted. But a free agent, every agent wants a player to be drafted because I want them to receive bonus money. If you go as a free agent, you don't get no bonus money. You have to. The schools have to have a player, pro player developer. The 3rd year, the 3rd year, if he putting up the numbers, you got to get that player a pro player developer to run that 40, the things they're gonna put them through in the combines. You have to take pride. The coaches have to take pride in their players. They coaches they play for the school, and the coaches don't take pride in the players, because I developed players, and I had more players than the schools HBCUs, and I don't have 60 people on my sideline.
I'm with you on that. Like, I feel like, the easiest way to word it for people who may be listening is that, and this is what I would, if I had to rank everything that we talked about tonight in terms of importance to players being drafted, you have to have the mix of measurables, the film to back up those measurables, performance at the combine, the pro day, or whatever, and then the film has to match all of that. You have to be exceptional in all three of those areas just to have a chance.
Right.
Just to have a chance. Like Isaiah Bolden, if he goes out there and runs a 4.45 or a 4.5 or something like that, he does not get drafted.
Right.
So I'm with you.
He ran a 4.3, right? And
yeah,
he had the measurables. He was 6'2" and 195.
And the film matches. Plus, I think Bolden had like the like trump, like the wild card, which is special teams. If you can be an X factor on special teams, that's your golden ticket.
Team. Right. Aubrey Miller, if he would have ran a 4.3, he would have got drafted about the 6th or 7th round. But since he didn't run a 4.3, he free agent.
I'm with you, man. I appreciate you so much for calling in, man. This is a amazing call to end the show on, man. I always appreciate you calling in. I hope to hear from you again, man, when I go live later this week.
I'm coming back from the stroke.
Oh yeah, no, I remember you telling me last time you called in, man, and you sound a whole lot better, man, even from when last time I talked to you, man. I know a lot of people in the chat said the same thing, man. So definitely an inspiration to us all, man, especially because my grandmother had a stroke about a year ago too, man. So I understand, the struggle. So I just appreciate you calling in, man, and I love that you keep sounding better and better every time I talk to you.
All right, Blue. It's been a pleasure talking to you and Scotty.
Hey, I appreciate you so much, man. Look forward to talking to you next show.
All right.
Man, shout out to him. I appreciate him calling in so much, man, because there's a lot of people in the chat, man, that won't call in with everything else going on, man, and he's out here calling in regardless of anything, man. So I appreciate him always calling in, man. But I just closed the call lines. I want to kind of recap everything that that we talked about tonight. I was trying to find, someone commented, like, I think he might have been exaggerating on some of the times, man. Like, inside linebackers probably aren't running 4.3s, but I think we can all agree in the chat that a 4.7 is not an elite time for an undersized inside linebacker. Let's just be honest. A 4.7 for an inside linebacker under 6 foot and around 220 pounds is not an elite time. It's not. And I think Aubrey's going to do great. Listen, my favorite team, the Dolphins, signed him. And if he makes the roster, I'm getting a jersey and I'm going to ask him to sign it, man. I'm rooting for all these guys, all the FCS guys, to make the roster. But we got to have an honest conversation. A 4.7 is not an elite 40 time for inside linebackers. It just isn't. I'll look up the combine times. Hang on. Let me find the NFL combine thing. We'll look at this together, man, before we get off of here, man, because I ain't got nothing. I don't have nothing to do. We'll go to the combine results. We'll look at Isaiah Land and we'll compare Aubrey to what we heard. So some of the linebacking times. Owen Papo had the fastest combine 40 for linebackers at a 4.39. Trenton Simpson, a 4.4. Yasir Abdullah from Louisville, a 4.4. Dorian Williams, 4.4. D Winters, 4.4. Charlie Thomas, 4.5. Anthony Orgy from Vanderbilt, 4.5. Jeremy Banks from Tennessee, 4.5. Shaka Hayward, 4.5. Darian Henley, 4.5. A 4.7 would be the slowest time among linebackers that ran the 40 at the NFL Combine. The slowest time ran on this site, on the NFL.com combine site where all the stats are, the slowest time was a 4.69. Now, this is an unconfirmed 4.7, but that is what the scouts and people around the combine were saying he ran. So you really and truly to have an elite time, you had to run a 4.5 minimum to have an elite time for an inside linebacker. Minimum. And when you look at defensive ends, Isaiah Lamb was at a 4.6. You had Nolan Smith at a 4.39, Byron Young at a 4.43, Robert Beal with a 4.4, DJ Johnson a 4.4, the kid from Northwestern, I can't pronounce his name, at a 4.4, Yaya Diaby from Louisville at a 4.5, Derek Hall at a 4.5, Lonnie Phelps at a 4.5, Isaiah Foskey at a 4.5. And these are guys that are not undersized. Like the kid from Auburn and Derek Hall was 6'3", 254. And regardless, like I agree with you, man. I don't know. I don't love that took away draft stock, but they could have had a bad day. But at the end of the day, the scouts look at that, and it matters to some people, man. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just telling you what people have said. That's just the feedback I've got. Listen, man, I've already told you guys, I had Aubrey getting drafted. I thought Isaiah was going to get drafted. I thought Mark was going to get drafted. I said 3 to 6. So I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just giving you guys the feedback that I got from players. So it's just it's sad that it came down to that, man. And even if it's not an official time, which pro days are never really official times, that's why if you get invited to the combines or anything, it's really important to run there. It's like SWAC fans said, man, it's a standard fare or not. And that's kind of where we're at. And if I'm getting feedback from people I'm talking to about that, then I know for a fact other people heard that same number. So yeah, like Big Dog said in the chat, man, I'm just trying to give you guys the feedback, man, that I'm hearing, because I know a lot of people were really kind of shaken up about what all transpired yesterday, man. But real quick, running through here, Niles Gaddy in the transfer portal. Aubrey reportedly ran like a high 4.6, low 4.7. Isaiah Lamb ran a 4.6 at the NFL Combine. So those were the two times that were reported. Gaddy in the portal, also Debo in the portal, offensive tackle from Jackson State, both for kind of related to what happened this past weekend at the NFL draft. The 11 FCS guys that drafted, a significant drop from the 24 that we saw last season, but still more than the 2020-2021 draft, which only saw 6 FCS players a piece in those two drafts, but it was the second lowest number since 94. Talked a little bit about what the path is, really and truly just kind of talked about how none of these really are just a standalone thing that you have to check off, and you kind of have to have a mix of everything. And then we talked a little bit about the transfer portal hurting FCS football, man. All these great players are headed to the next level, and you're getting in return not the stars of the FBS level. So that we had a lot to talk about tonight, man. But listen, we're trying to get to 7K subscribers first, trying to get 10K before the season, man. So hit the like button, subscribe. If you want to go back, we got pro day content, spring game content, highlights, Senior Bowl, man. We have anything you need to check out this all season. If you go to the community page, there's a link with notes on all the FCS drafted players and a whole article strictly listing undrafted free agents and mini camp invites. Over 115 FCS players have signed as an undrafted free agent or received mini camp invites. Each and every morning on the website, thebluebloodscfb.com, you can find the FCS front page. It's the 5 to 6 top stories every single day from across the FCS, whether it's transfer portal entries, commitments, coaching news, everything like that, man. So we had a lot going on. If you're watching the replay, definitely make sure to comment your thoughts. You can hit me up on you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff, and the scrolling ticker below, man. But I appreciate all of you guys so much. But until next time, guys, the Blue Bloods are out.